London, a city steeped in history, tradition, and the ever-watchful gaze of the monarchy. But on one crisp October morning, that gaze shifted. It wasn't the familiar stoic countenance of Queen Elizabeth, nor the well-meaning, if somewhat weary, face of King Charles. No, this was different. This was Camilla. Imagine the scene. Dawn breaking over Buckingham Palace, the first rays of sunlight glinting off the gold leaf of the royal crest. The sentries, stiff and unblinking, performing their time-honored duty. And then the impossible. A colossal bronze statue, seemingly materialized overnight, dominating the very forecourt of the palace. Not a beloved monarch of the past, but Camilla, Queen Consort, gazing out with an unnerving intensity. The news detonated like a carefully planted explosive. The BBC, Sky News, the tabloids, they all scrambled to capture the image, the story, the sheer audacity of it all. Camilla's statue stuns Britain? The headlines screamed. Has the Queen Consort declared her own legacy? The questions hung in the air, thick with disbelief and a healthy dose of royal scandal. But the most deafening sound was the silence emanating from Buckingham Palace. No comment, no confirmation, no explanation. Just an echoing void that fueled the public's frenzy. Where was King Charles? Was he complicit in this brazen act of self-promotion? Or had he been blindsided? As much a victim as the rest of the nation? The theories flew faster than the pigeons in Trafalgar Square. Some whispered of a modern PR stunt, a desperate attempt to rebrand the monarchy for a new generation. Others saw it as a power play, a calculated move by Camilla to cement her place in history, regardless of the cost. And then there were those who saw something far more sinister, a chilling glimpse into the ambitions simmering beneath the surface of the woman who had once lived in the shadow of Princess Diana. Think about it. For decades, Camilla was the other woman, the object of public scorn, the woman blamed for the breakdown of a fairy tale marriage. She endured the relentless scrutiny, the cruel headlines, the unwavering devotion to Diana that haunted every step she took. Now, after years of quiet service, of slowly winning over a skeptical public, she had seemingly thrown it all away with one audacious act. But was it truly just vanity? Or was there something deeper, something more complex driving Camilla's actions? Was this the culmination of a lifetime spent fighting for recognition, for respect, for a place in a dynasty that had always seemed to favor the ghosts of the past? The crowd outside Buckingham Palace swelled, a chaotic mix of outrage and awe. Some laid flowers at the base of the statue, a begrudging acknowledgement of Camilla's new position. Others defiantly placed photos of Diana beside the pedestal, a silent reminder of the woman they believed could never be replaced. The atmosphere was electric, volatile. Britain was a tinderbox, and Camilla's statue was the spark. Political analysts and royal commentators dissected the event with surgical precision. This is a deliberate display of dominance, one declared on Sky News. A statue in front of Buckingham isn't decoration, it's a declaration of power. Another countered, if this was done without the king's consent, it's a desecration of royal sanctity, a direct insult to the monarchy's legacy. And still, silence from the palace. A silence that spoke volumes. A silence that hinted at a deep rift within the royal family, a battle for power and influence being waged behind closed doors. The question wasn't just why the statue had appeared, but how. How could something of that magnitude be erected in the heart of London, on the most heavily guarded piece of real estate in the country, without anyone noticing? The answer, it turned out, was far more elaborate and far more unsettling than anyone could have imagined. Eleanor Shaw, a young journalist at The Guardian, found herself thrust into the center of the storm, hunched over her computer, surrounded by architectural diagrams and old maps of Buckingham Square. She knew this was more than just a bizarre news story. This was a conspiracy, a meticulously planned operation that reeked of royal intrigue. They couldn't have built that without official clearance, she muttered, her fingers flying across the keyboard. Her editor, a seasoned veteran of countless royal scandals, remained skeptical. Not for ordinary folks, no, But this is Camilla we're talking about. She's crossed every boundary before. Start by finding out who made it. And so Eleanor began her investigation. She combed through records of art commissions, contacted the Royal Cultural Council, and even reviewed customs data for art shipments entering Britain. Days blurred into nights as she chased down every lead, every whisper, every shadow of a possibility. Then, a breakthrough. A shipping container labeled Royal Heritage Sculpture had arrived at the port of Dover 2 weeks earlier. Sent by a small art firm based in Paris, the listed lead artist, Henri Duval. The name sent a jolt through Eleanor. Duval, the sculptor who shapes the soul of power, as Lemon Desard had once described him. A man who had sculpted monuments for the French government, memorializing renowned female writers. What was he doing involved in this? 2 days later, Eleanor found herself on the Eurostar, rain-streaking the train windows as she sped toward Paris. The address she'd traced led to a narrow lane in Montmartre, an aging sculpture studio dusted white with plaster residue. The air was faintly sweet with the scent of casting wax. A tall, lean man with chestnut hair and hands stained with bronze dust answered her knock. His eyes were weary. "You're the British journalist?" he asked, his French accent thick. Eleanor replied calmly, "I only need to know one thing, the Camilla statue. You were the sculptor, weren't you?" Henry hesitated, then gave a quiet nod. "No." "Recordings," he said firmly. "You listen, I talk." He pulled out a chair and began to speak, his words painting a picture of a Camilla far different from the one portrayed in the media. A woman who arrived in Paris without fanfare, accompanied only by an elderly secretary and a plain-clothed bodyguard. A woman with a calm, almost gentle voice, but eyes that were cold, deep, and calculating. "She didn't speak of art," Henry said. "She spoke of remembrance. People always remember the dead, but I want them to see the living." He revealed that Camilla had commissioned not a statue, but a manifesto, a face devoid of emotion, meant to embody the strength of a woman who doesn't need love to exist. When Henry suggested such an expression might alienate the public, Camilla had simply smiled. "Sometimes," she told him, "to be respected, you must make the world fear you." "And why Buckingham Palace?" Henry hesitated, then confessed. She said, "That's where the world looks when it looks at the royals, and if it stood there, she'd never be forgotten. When people think of the Queen, I want them to think of me and no one else." The project's execution had been planned with near military precision. Camilla had personally arranged for a private construction company to handle the work under the guise of a square renovation project. Laborers were recruited in secret and worked exclusively at night under strict non-disclosure agreements. On the final night, Henri recalled, Camilla came to the studio alone. She stood before the statue for almost an hour saying nothing. When I asked if she was happy with it, she answered, "I've waited my entire life for the world to look up to me." He added, "I don't think she's insane. She's consumed by the need to exist in history, in a dynasty where every woman before her was buried beneath a man's name." Eleanor felt her heart pound. She knew she had just heard the most crucial revelation of the entire affair. "Can I quote her exactly?" she asked. Henry nodded. "Yes, but write it truthfully. When history only remembers dead women, I'll make it remember the living one." 2 days later, The Guardian's front page screamed, "The woman who forced history to look at her." The story, citing an anonymous French sculptor, detailed Queen Camilla's audacious plan. The closing quote, Camilla's haunting line, set Britain ablaze. Again. The BBC opened its broadcast with the anchor's somber voice. Sources have confirmed that the Camilla statue was created by French sculptor Henri Duval under a confidential commission from the Queen herself. Duval revealed that the Queen viewed the statue as a manifesto for a new dynasty. Buckingham Palace continues to withhold comment. Social media exploded. "She's gone too far. This isn't art, it's self-worship," one faction raged. "She's fearless. History belongs to those who refuse to be forgotten," another countered. The battle lines were drawn, not just between royalists and republicans, but between those who saw Camilla as a visionary and those who saw her as a megalomaniac. Historians piled on. From Queen Victoria to Elizabeth II, no monarch has ever erected their own statue while alive. A royal symbolism expert declared on ITV, "If this truly was Camilla's decision, it's not merely vanity. It's an act of rebellion within the very heart of the monarchy." That night in Paris, Henri Duval's phone rang nonstop. Reporters, producers, even palace officials begged him to stay silent. He ignored them all. Watching the news, he saw the statue bathed in the golden evening light and whispered, "She got what she wanted. She made the world look up." Back in London, Eleanor sat alone in the newsroom, glued to the live broadcast. Before Buckingham Palace, crowds had gathered once more. An elderly woman held aloft a sign, "We remember Diana." Another group waved banners. Camilla's era begins. Two visions of Britain, two icons, clashed under the same night sky. The bronze Camilla stood unmoving, her face blank, eyes fixed eternally on the palace gates. Eleanor closed her laptop and gazed out the window. This story had become more than journalism. It was a new royal tragedy, born from the hunger for immortality and the terror of being erased. And somewhere within Buckingham's silent halls, maybe Camilla was smiling, the smile of a woman convinced she had carved her name into eternity, no matter the price. From Henri Duval's testimony, the public began to piece together the truth buried beneath the bronze. It wasn't just art, it was the visible outcome of a silent war inside the royal household. A war between memory and envy, between love and dominion, between a man chained to the past and a woman determined not to vanish. Days before the statue appeared, Charles and Camilla had clashed in the study at Clarence House. On the desk lay a thick folder stamped, "Confidential, Royal Memorial Project." Plans for a memorial to Princess Diana, personally approved by the king. A serene rose garden encircling a plaque, in memory of the light that never fades. For Camilla, it struck at the core of her pride. She picked up the file, scanned a few pages, and slammed it shut. "You still can't let her go, can you, Charles?" she said, her voice trembling. 30 years, and she's still stronger than I'll ever be in your heart. Gone was the Queen Consort's polished tone. This was the raw voice of a woman suppressed by resentment. Charles looked up, fatigue in his eyes. "This isn't about emotions," he said quietly. "It's a king's duty." Diana represents compassion. The nation needs a place to remember that. Camilla's lips twisted. "And what about me? I've endured the world's scorn, the headlines, the humiliation, and I've stayed by your side. Don't I deserve recognition? Or at least respect?" Charles turned away, his tone dropping. "You already have everything, Camilla. Don't ask that history belonged to you as well." Those words detonated. Camilla straightened, her voice cold as glass. "You want the world to honor the woman who haunted you all your life? Fine. Then I'll make sure they remember me, too. In bronze, in stone, in a vision they'll never erase." She stormed out, leaving a teacup trembling on the desk. That night, Camilla placed calls to her allies on the Royal Cultural Council. "We're launching the Women's Legacy in the Monarchy Project. The inauguration happens tomorrow." The officials were stunned, but within an hour, impeccably prepared documents arrived, complete with official seals and valid signatures. Camilla had planned it all, waiting for the moment Charles uttered Diana's name to pull the trigger. Using her patronage on the council, she ordered the Buckingham Palace forecourt sealed, citing preparations for a ceremony honoring modern royal women. A perfect bureaucratic cover. Under the pretense of cultural site upgrades, she signed an emergency contract with a private construction firm. Laborers were hired under confidentiality clauses, told only to assemble large wooden crates marked Royal Heritage Project. None knew what they were building. London lay shrouded in fog. From within the mist came the clang of hammers and the hiss of welding torches like a clandestine ritual. Camilla appeared around 2 a.m., silently supervising. When the final bolts were fastened, she stepped forward, lifted her gaze toward her bronze likeness, and whispered, "From this moment on, no one will erase me from history."